Hi, everyone. I'll let some more people trickle in and join before I get started. Great, I see some more people signing on. Great. Well, I'll get going, and then as people come in, they can join us to hear along. But thank you so much for joining me today. It's nice to meet you all. My name is Kate Navarro. I'm the Director of Admissions for the Management Master's Program, specifically the MMS GBS program, and as well as our MAM program. Again, thank you for joining me today. This is a new webinar we're doing, and I'm really excited to be here with you today. And it's called When is the Right Time to Apply to the Master's in Global Business and Society program. We're not going to do a deep program overview today. This is really about timelines, things to consider, where you are in your academic journey, and hopefully I can help move you along in applying to the GBS program and help answer your questions. So at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. Some of you already pre-submitted questions, but that's what we're going to be doing today. I'd also like to take a moment to thank my colleague, Elena Heath in the background, who is working her magic to make this webinar happen and to get it recorded and out to you and on our website as well. So let's jump in. Let's get started. Please feel free to use the Q&A function at the very bottom to type in any questions as we go along. And like I said, at the end, I'll make sure to get to them. It's a lot of content to cover, so bear with me and I'll try my best to walk you through. So I think to get started, let's talk a little bit about the pathways to the GBS program and where you are individually, because the point of this webinar is to really talk about you specifically, each of your individual situations and where you might be in your academic journey. So we have two application pathways to the Yale SOM GBS degree program. One is through M2M and the other is through our traditional application pathway. I'll dive into what those things mean and what those different pathways are as well during this webinar. In addition, we have some concurrent degree options with some select schools. Again, I'll talk to you about what that means, but essentially the concurrent degree options are a way for students to complete 2 degrees, their Master in Management and then their Master's in Global Business and Society at Yale, in a shorter amount of time than doing them independently. So, main question is, where are you in your academic journey? If you're looking at this, are you thinking about applying to an MIM? Are you currently in your undergraduate institution, or maybe you just graduated and you're thinking now about a Master in Management program? If so, what program are you thinking applying to? There are so many MIM programs, and I'd love to talk through some of the unique opportunities we have with certain schools in case that helps you think about which MIM program you want to potentially join. We'll talk on the next slide about the pathways if you are thinking about a MIM, but those pathways are listed here. The M2M, which is a master to master, a 1+1, and a concurrent degree option. Again, I will explain those next, lots of terms, and so I'll make sure to dive into that. Or maybe you found yourself, you just started your Master in Management program. Many programs around the world just started in August, September. So maybe you just joined a Master in Management program and you're thinking about what's your next year afterwards, or what's it look like after your MIM. We have concurrent degree options, as I mentioned, with some schools, but you can also apply after graduating too. That's always another option. And lastly, have you graduated from your Master in Management program already? If so, you are still eligible to apply to the MMS GBS program. We do say you have to have under 3 years of work experience, so I would just say that with a caveat. We will look at an individual basis, but essentially under 3 years of work experience. So now that I've outlined the 3 kind of pathways or 3 different areas you could be in, buckets you could be in, so to speak, let's dive into then how to apply depending on where you are in your academic journey. This slide has a lot of information, so I'll do my best to break it down. But again, this is great where you can type in Q&A or questions so I can answer them at the end. So our M2M pathway, which is for students applying prior to the MIM. So if you're looking into MIMs right now and you're thinking of applying to one, the M2M or Master to Master is a great option for you. We have these partnerships in M2M with 3 MIM schools. One of them is HEC Paris, another one is HKUST, and the last one is UBC Sauder. So if you're choosing or looking at one of these three schools for your MIM, you have this unique opportunity to apply via M2M. And what that means is you're applying to both programs at the same time. So as you're exploring MIMS and as you're applying to MIMS, when I mean MIMS, I mean HSA, HQST, and UBC. If you're applying to one of these, you can also concurrently apply to the Yale GBS program, essentially planning your 2 years out. So what you would do is this year, you would apply to, let's just say HQST and the GBS program through M2M. You would get 2 decisions, but you're planning out the next 2 years. And so you'll get admitted, you'll go to HQST, then you'll come to Yale. And at the end of it, you'll have 2 master's degrees, 2 countries, 2 global business schools, essentially in 2 years. So really kind of, I say, elevating your academic profile through M2M. Again, these are only through 3 MIM schools that we offer this application prior to joining them. Now let's talk about the next pathway, a 1+1. So this is for students who are currently in their MIM or who are thinking about their MIMs. It's not similar to the M2M in that the M2M is restricted for those 3 schools. The 1+1 is a little bit more broader. So what this means is if you're currently in a MIM or you're exploring MIMs that are 1-year degrees, this is a great opportunity to do a 1+1. So again, 1 year at your MIM, 1 year at Yale for the GBS program. Similar to M2M, you'd be getting 2 master's degrees from 2 countries, 2 global business schools in 2 years. However, less restriction on the year 1 school. And you wouldn't be applying prior to the MIM. So these are for students who are in a MIM, a 1-year MIM, wanting to come to Yale next year to essentially have 2 years of 2 degrees. Now let's talk about concurrent degree options. So concurrent degree options are unique in that we have partnerships. So we have partnerships for M2M, which is prior to applying to your MIM, but we have concurrent degree partnerships for students who are in their MIM. What this means is programs that are longer, MIMs that are longer than a year long, you can essentially shorten through this concurrent degree process. What does that mean? So if you're currently at ESMT, if you're at HSA, if you're at Bocconi, if you're at IE, or say you're at FGV, you just started your MIM, you have this unique opportunity to apply to Yale this year and complete your MIM studies at Yale. What that means is you'll do your year 1 at your year 1 school of your MIM, come to Yale, and those credits that you'll be taking at Yale, elective credits, will transfer back to your year 1 school. So they will transfer back to ESMT, they will transfer back to IE, and you'll essentially be able to graduate with your MIM and your MMS GBS at the end of it. So you're, again, getting 2 master's degrees from 2 countries and 2 top business schools pretty much in 2 years. This concurrent degree pathway is for students who are currently in a MIM at one of these schools, or if you're exploring a MIM, these are great school options if you're thinking about a concurrent degree with the GBS program. Okay, our last option for the MIM is applying after the MIM. So say you've completed your Master in Management program and you're thinking about a little bit more academic experience. The GBS is a great program for you. Sure, you won't have the shortened length potentially, but if you attended a 1-year MIM and you're now thinking about it, that is still 2 degrees in 2 years. My point here is the GBS program is for anyone and everyone in your, depending on where you are in your academic journey, before, currently in, or after your MIM. We can talk more specifically about your situation and which bucket you should be in through the Q&A function, or feel free to reach out to us too. I know I covered a lot of information there. Okay. So now timelines. So as I had mentioned, the M2M, or Master to Master, is about applying prior to starting your MIM. And so those 3 schools, HSA, HQST, and UBC, are our partner schools for M2M. There are different deadlines for each of these schools. And so there's a lot of information here mentioning all the deadlines, but the thing to notice is there are 3 round deadlines for UBC and 4 for HQST and HSA. Some of those round 1 deadlines are coming up soon in October. And if you're just starting to learn about MIMS, about the GBS program, you don't have to necessarily apply in October in round one. We have plenty of rounds throughout the year, October through April. However, it's always, I think important to think about when to apply, as we're talking about today, and being able to plan out your studies ahead of time. If you're thinking about applying to two MIM schools, part of M2M, you can do that with the GBS program. And what I mean by that is if you want to apply to HQST and HSA with Yale, but you don't know exactly what year one school you want to go to yet, you can apply in the same round. So you can apply to 2 year one schools and Yale at the same time. We just ask that they're in the same round. I can provide more specifics on that if you have more questions, but I just wanted to mention that in a quick timeline. All of these are also on our website that you can look at. So I'm going to provide an even more detailed slide with the deadlines. So here you'll see the deadlines broken down by school even more. And what I really want to tell you here, because I'm also providing the application decision release, as well as the enrollment deadline. Why these dates are important is really for planning. So what we do after each application deadline is we're reading applications and we're interviewing between the roughly month to month and a half between a deadline and a decision. So lots happening on our team. And unfortunately, as an applicant, you're just sitting there patiently waiting for an answer. After the decision, you'll then have roughly a month, 3 weeks to a month to be able to confirm your decision. You'll confirm with Yale, but we won't see you for another year. So M2M is a little different, as you'll be going to your year one school, and that will be kind of your contact point. We still are, but you're admitted, enrolled, and then we'll talk to you, in a couple months to a year once you've started at your year one school. Again, these deadlines are on our website. I just wanted to lay them out so you can get a general sense of when is the right time to apply if you're thinking about an M2M application. Okay. So now we have our GBS application deadlines. Our application is opening next week, September 24th. It's not open right now. And so once it is open, you can go in and explore and take a look at our essay questions, what we have in our application this year. And you can begin your application right away, regardless of when you plan to submit, whether that's round 1, round 2, or round 3. You can start it September 24th. That's completely fine. Excuse me. So the GBS deadline is really for students who are currently in their MIM or graduated from their MIM. These are the deadlines you would follow, unlike the M2M deadlines for students who are thinking of applying to a MIM. So we have our round 1 deadline coming up in January. This deadline is open to applicants from Global Network for Advanced Management schools only. So we have about 31 plus, because more are being added, Global Network schools in the Global Network for Advanced Management. You can find those on our website. You might even know if you're part of a Global Network school now. And round 1 is designed or is designated just for those students. Round 1 is a great time to apply if you're a Global Network student, because it's a time to think ahead, to be able, and we'll get into these a little bit more, but to really be able to plan your year out. Round 2 and round 3 are open to all students who are in a Global Network for Advanced Management school or not, so all other global business schools. So if you aren't attending a global Network for Advanced Management school, that's completely fine. We have a February deadline and an April deadline as well for you to join. That doesn't mean you can't start your application in September and keep it going and get things ready for the February deadline. It's always good to be prepared and start ahead of time. Okay, so now let's dive into each of those deadlines a little more for the GBS program. As I mentioned earlier, after each application deadline, we are reading, we are interviewing, and that takes roughly 1 to 1.5 months. Interviews are conducted over Zoom, so you'll hear from us if you get a Zoom invitation. And after candidates receive a decision, they'll then have roughly a month to enroll in the program. And so I just really want to lay these out. So round 1, as I mentioned, is for Global Network students only. Round 1 is advantageous for those students, specifically because you'd have a decision by February and you would have so much time to apply for your visa and to get prepared to be at Yale in August. Round 2 is in February, still plenty of time. You'd find out your results in April. That gives you plenty of time to do everything you need before August. And then our round 3 deadline does come a little later in terms of getting your decision in May and then only having until August. However, many students are still plenty able to prepare to be here. It's really about when is the best time for you to apply. How much time do you feel like you need to prepare to arrive on campus, to prepare your application? Pick the deadline that works best for you. One thing I would like to mention, there are no quotas or caps in each deadline. We have scholarships funds in each round. And so there is no particular round that you should be looking at other than timing for yourself, less so about actually being admitted to the program. So let's talk about some other things to consider. I know I've touched on a few of these points, and I've focused so much so far on the timeline and dates, which are obviously important, but there are other things to consider too when thinking about the GBS program. I'd love to talk through this. So application readiness, what does this mean? We want you to submit an application when it best represents yourself. We don't want you to rush through an application or feel like you didn't have enough time to prepare your essay answers, or it wasn't a good representation of, who you are, how prepared you are. You shouldn't submit yet. You should really submit when you're ready and you feel confident in your application. You feel like it is the best you that you're displaying to Yale. What does this mean? It means a variety of reasons for every applicant. It could mean that you want to retake your test and you want a better test score, whether that's the GMAT or GRE. It could mean that you need a little extra time for your recommenders or to find a recommender who's going to write a thoughtful recommendation for you. Or potentially just time spent on your essays, really reflecting on yourself and being able to display yourself in those essays. So think long and hard about when is the best time for you to put all of your effort and time into the application to submit, and how that coincides with the application deadlines. Another thing to consider is financial planning. The GBS program is a major financial commitment. We are aware of that. It's a large tuition price. And so we are here to help you make a tailored financial aid package. What that means is we offer merit-based scholarships based on your application. Those range anywhere from roughly $10,000 up to half tuition. So we do not offer full ride tuition scholarships. And so that's something to take into consideration as you're thinking about applying, but also financially planning for the next year. And so scholarships in your home countries or scholarships outside of SOM tend to have deadlines within fall or even before some of our application deadlines in January. So it's always good to start looking into scholarships now, looking into loans in your home countries now, and really just thinking ahead as how am I going to plan to finance this degree program? It's always good to be prepared. Visas. Something I'd just like to mention about visas is it's always better to apply earlier. Most of our students come on an F1 student visa. You need to go through a visa appointment. This past year, we saw a lot of visa delays, and it was unfortunate. Some students had to defer a year and come a year later because of that. And so it's always good to apply earlier, start working on your visa earlier, and so you can get ahead of some of those delays that are really out of your control. Okay, excuse me, housing. If you're thinking about living in graduate housing, which is technically on-campus housing, we suggest you apply earlier in round 1. Housing opens typically around April 1st, and if you look at the deadlines, round 2 would fall kind of after that April 1st deadline. So if you would like to be in graduate housing, on-campus housing, it fills up quickly. Apply in round 1, or if you're a non-GNM school, apply in round 2. Get that decision as quick as you can and start applying for on-campus housing if that's what you're interested in. We can talk more about housing offline. There are plenty of housing options. Many of our students don't live in graduate on-campus housing, but it is a nice option for students. What do we mean by the year you plan to enroll? We all have family situations. Some of you are going to be leaving your home countries, maybe for the first time, or really picking up and moving your life to the US potentially for a year. And so we want you to apply in the year that you actually plan to enroll and actually plan to come. So if you're thinking 2 years out and I need another year to do some stuff before I actually come, don't apply this year. Wait a year to apply. It's always best to apply when you are planning to come that year. just in terms of being able to tell your story, why it makes sense now, and also just in terms of planning and the class itself and putting together the class. So people have family businesses, they are caregivers, you have startups, just get all of your ducks in a row before you're thinking of applying and potentially being admitted. And lastly, our program start date. This is extremely important. We realize August 11th is an early start date for many. Some programs don't start until September. At Yale SOM, we start our program early. We start in August, and you have to be on campus for August 11th. I realize that that is not the timeline that everyone wants to hear when it comes to summer internships. So my best advice here is if you're considering applying, get ahead of that. Talk to your summer internship, let them know your end date, let them know maybe you can finish some things while you're on campus, but you have to physically be on campus for August 11th. That is when we start mandatory internships or mandatory orientation. So plan your internships ahead of time to think about that. Great. I think we've covered most all the things to consider. So I'd love to now jump into some scenarios. Why I think this is helpful is maybe you're in one of these scenarios we created, but maybe you're not. And so that's what's great about the Q&A function, submitting your questions and talking to us. But let's talk through some potential scenarios that you could find yourself in and what to do and when to apply. So say you're exploring programs and you're thinking of applying to an MIM. You're likely in your undergraduate program right now, or you've just graduated from your undergraduate degree. You have 3 pathways. You have the M2M pathway that we talked about, and that's with UBC, Sauder, HQST, and HEC Paris. That's with their MIMs. We also have 1+1s. So exploring MIMs that are 1-year degree to then complement that 1-year degree with Yale and the GBS program. So the 1+1 is really the MIM plus the GBS. And lastly, concurrent degree options. If you're thinking about applying to a MIM, maybe you want to apply to one of the schools we have concurrent degree options with, so that you could potentially join that program and shorten it, again, two degrees and potentially 2 years. So 3 different pathways there. Maybe you're currently in your MIM and you just found out about the concurrent degree option and your school has it. So say you're at you just started at IE, you just started at FGV or Bocconi, and you found out you can come to Yale next year with this concurrent degree option. Go to your MIM director, your MIM office. We have contacts at each of these schools, and talk to them about this option with the GBS program and what it's like to do a concurrent degree. Reach out to us. Our email I'll mention at the end is gbs@yale.edu. Write to us. We'd be happy to talk about your specific case at your specific school. Okay, maybe you're thinking of applying, but you can't attend the GBS program until the following year. So I know I had just mentioned this on the previous slide. Wait to apply to the GBS program until you are ready to attend in that year. If you're exploring us for a year, it only puts you in a better situation to be able to tell us about why this program is right for you. And so continue to explore, but don't apply until you're ready. Okay, maybe you just graduated from your MIM program and you still have under 3 years work experience. Great, apply to the program. You're more than welcome to apply. You don't have to be a current student. You can be a graduate of a Master in Management program. Maybe you are a current student. I don't know if we have any students from HEC right now, but maybe you're a current student in the HEC MIM program and you just started and you're thinking about what round to apply in. There is a bit of a restriction. HEC MIM students can only apply in round 1. So pay attention to that January 8th deadline. We're opening our application next week. Hop into the application, start one, get those essay questions, start working on it. I mean, you have a couple months before the January deadline, but HEC MIM students, current students, can only apply in round 1. And maybe you're applying, and if admitted, you want to live in on-campus housing. I know I had mentioned this earlier. Apply early. On-campus housing fills up quickly, and so apply during round 1 or round 2. If you don't get into graduate housing, on-campus housing, do not panic. There are plenty of housing options. A lot of our students, too, will room with each other and get an apartment together or with a GBS student or even an MBA student. It's a great way, too, to potentially meet people if you do want roommates, just depending on what you're looking at for housing. Okay, so with those scenarios, this is a little bit of a short webinar, but this is really where I want to talk to you and answer your questions. So please use the Q&A function, submit your questions you have after everything we just talked about. Also, join us for another event. We are hosting Q&A events every month. We have upcoming webinars. We're going to be having an upcoming alumni webinar in October. It hasn't been posted yet, but will. So check out our website via the QR code, and you can see all upcoming events. And then lastly, connect with us. We want to hear from you. Email us at gbs@yale.edu, and we would be happy to answer your questions, whether it's a personal case or anything we covered today, really anything under the sun, we'd be happy to answer. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go over the Q&A function. I also have some pre-submitted questions that some students submitted as well. But overall, I really appreciate you guys being here with me today, and hopefully you did learn a little bit more about when to apply. Okay, first question. Okay, do you have any upcoming intakes in the program for spring? We do not. So we only have one intake for the GBS program, and that's every August, technically starting in September is when classes start, at the end of August, early September. So one intake in the fall. The program will run from August until May. So just a kind of heads up in terms of the timeline. This student is also asking if we accept the PTE as an academic admissions, as well as TOEFL, IELTS, and DET. Great questions. So as part of the GBS program, we do require a standardized test score. It has to be a GMAT or GRE test score. We will not accept anything other than those two. If you haven't taken the GMAT or GRE, there is plenty of time to do so. I mean, as you saw, we have 3 rounds. So start planning now. You can take your test score and apply in a later round until you have something that you're happy with. In terms of English tests or English writing tests, the TOEFL, IELTS, we do not require these. So we're very fortunate in that we have something called video questions in our application. Students will record and respond to videos essentially, and record and respond answers to these video questions. And that's a way for us to test your English, but also test what it's like to be under a little pressure to answer some of these questions that are random and have no preparation whatsoever. So back to your question, no, there is no English test required. My colleague Elena, thank you very much, Elena, did post our recent brochure that we just created. So feel free to download that for some more information about the GBS program. We also have some really great information sessions recorded on our website. So while I didn't talk a lot about what the GBS program is, because this webinar was really about when should you apply, if you want to learn more specifics about the program, go on our website, watch some of those webinars, and they're a great resource, as well as download our brochure. Okay, so I'm gonna, well, people still continue to ask questions. I'll answer a few that came in that were pre-submitted. It's a really good question. Actually, one student had asked what kind of skill set they should equip themselves with to be a competitive candidate for the Yale GBS program. So in the GBS program, we are looking at grades and test scores, your prior internships, but we really want to understand your story. So making sense of where you've been, what you're going to be doing, and where you're going, and how the GBS program fits into that. And so I think being a competitive candidate, sure, is having stellar grades and a great test score, but it's more than that for us. It's, do you connect with our school? Do you connect with our program? And can you tell us about how the program is going to complement your MEM and why you need this additional degree? So I hope that helps, but really talking about fit, how you fit in. Okay, a few more questions came in, which is great. Are there any options offering for waiving the GMAT or GRE? There are not. This is a requirement for all of our programs at SOM. You will have to have a GMAT or GRE test score. We do accept the GMAT Focus, which is new, as well as any GMAT or GRE scores taken during the COVID period. Okay. Another pre-submitted question that I think is helpful for students is, and similar to the last one, is how can I maximize my chances of acceptance? And I'm going to go back to what I just said, is be yourself. do your research, understand our program, talk about our program, how it fits with you, how you fit into it. But ultimately, my main piece of advice here is be yourself. We are going to know if you're not being yourself or if you're trying to tell us something that you think we want to hear. There's no right answers. I can promise you that. There are no right answers throughout this application. All it is us learning about you and seeing you fit into the cohort. And so be yourself, please. Don't feel like you need to have the right answer, because there is not one. Okay, great. Another question. Can I use my official transcript to indicate that I've graduated in good standing from a business school? So we do ask for 2 recommendations as part of the GBS program. One is from a professional source, and then the other is from an academic source, your dean or director of your MIM. And so we can't use your transcript from your MIM to replace that recommendation, but I can take a little pressure off. The recommendation from your dean or director is really just a letter saying that you were in good standing at the school. It's not an overall recommendation. They don't have to know you personally. Really, what we want to know is that you were a good citizen at your MIM school and you were a good student. If you're having trouble getting that letter, write to us. We can sometimes work with the schools. Sometimes we have contacts at schools we can help with. So yes. Another test score question. Do you accept the online version of the GRE? Yes, we will accept that as well. As long as you have a GRE or GMAT score, regardless of how it was taken, we will accept. Okay, let's see. Another question came in about our mission. Yale SOM's mission is to educate leaders for business and society, and this is reflected in our curriculum, our student experience, but also in the program name, MMS, for Global Business and Society. So this question is really about, what does that mean for a student? My best explanation here is that our mission is really intertwined in our curriculum, in our clubs, and everything that we're doing in the school, sometimes subtly and sometimes more upfront. It just depends. But really, we want you and we want our students to think about different perspectives, ideas, needs, people, industries. Everyone is different. And so really gaining essential skills to get out there, to become a leader, but more importantly, to improve lives through leadership as well in the business arena. Not only that, taking it to a global level and what that looks like. So a unique advantage of this program is having students from all over the world come in and give their perspectives of what it's like to do business in Ghana, what it's like to do business in Morocco, what it's like to do business in Hong Kong. Wherever it is, it's different. And so I think utilizing our mission and how to really impact lives all over the world is important. Okay, great. We have a student asking some specific questions which might help other students from HQST. If I chose the track of HQST plus GBS, do I need to submit the letter from the dean? If you are an M2M applicant, so if you're in your undergrad and you haven't started your MIM, no, that is not a requirement. You actually have different application requirements as an M2M candidate. And so my best advice here is go on our website to learn more. What I can say is, if you apply to HQST or HSA, they will transfer your application to us. You do not need to do anything in our system until we reach out to you. If you are a UBC M2M candidate, you do need to submit a Yale application. Some specifics around which program you're applying to, which school you're applying to. And so please write us directly so we can give you the most accurate information there, or hop on our website to see that. Okay, another question. If I'm applying to HQST as my MIM institution this year as well, am I eligible to apply to the GBS at the same time? Yes, you are, as part of M2M. Great question. You can apply to HQST and Yale at the exact same time as part of M2M to find out if you're getting admitted to both of them. What that means is you apply to HQST. Do not start a Yale application. We have those deadlines. In your HQST application, you're going to indicate that you're interested in M2M with Yale. HQST, after the deadline, will send your materials to us. We will go through them and we will reach out to you asking for some additional materials and next steps. And so you'll just wait to hear from us via an email. Reach out if you have any more questions on this particular case. Happy to answer them. Okay, we have a couple questions more getting into program, less getting into when to apply. This question is around if we're a STEM program and do we provide OPT extension? We do. We do have that as an option, both OPT and a management science major that could potentially make you eligible for a STEM OPT extension. Reach out to us with more questions on that, and take a look at our webinars too to learn more. I don't want to get too much into that right now, but I'm happy to talk to you individually. So reach out gbs@yale.edu and we can talk more about your case. Great. So I'm not seeing any more questions come in. Feel free, as we have a couple more minutes to type those in. I just want to thank you all so much for joining me today. I think it was a really fun webinar, really specific to each individual case as to when you want to apply. But I hope overall I gave a general sense of there are multiple pathways to the GBS program, multiple MIM programs you can join and then come to us. We hope to see your application at Yale. Great. Thank you all so much for joining me. Send us your questions, gbs@yale.edu. Happy to talk to you more. And I hope you'll join us for our next event coming up. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for joining me.